Welcome to our session-ending edition of This Week in Missouri Politics. We are joined by the man who many folks are saying is the most respected Senate Minority Leader since the Honorable Dick Russell. Senator John Rizzo, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the compliment, by the way. I don't know if I agree with that, but I appreciate it.
I always like to say in this last show of the session that we taped this on Friday morning, so there could be some unexpected things, but I think we can pretty safely say the Senate's wrapped up here. It's a session that was pretty productive if you consider some of the others. A lot of big things did pass, but IP reform held up at the end. End of the day, you're willing to let a version of IP reform go to the ballot, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we maintained that position from February.
Didn't like it.
We think it's a bad idea to begin with, but we would have had the opportunity to campaign against it and make our case. We just always, from the day one, wanted a fair fight. And the difference was they knew that if there was a fair fight, they would lose. So it was the steroids of politics, right? Just turning it on the ballot box and misleading people and to take the rights away.
But we disagree on this. I think it should be harder to amend the Missouri Constitution.
I think
not impossible.
There's a case for that.
But it should be harder.
Yeah, I think there's a real discussion to have around that. But the problem you have with that is you have to have both people come to that discussion open and honestly about how they're going to convey that to the people.
Why were people so afraid just to take the IP that you had to the ballot and run with it?
You'd have to ask them. I don't understand.
Look, do I think it was tough? Yes. But I think there was an absolute way to go to the people of this state and say it should be harder to amend this Constitution.
Sure.
But they chose to take a pass on it, I guess holding out for some of the ballot candy stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They know that it fails without deceiving voters on what they're voting on. And the fact of the matter is, it's kind of poetic. They could do an initiative petition to have the question before the people. I mean, thanks to the Democratic caucus, the Republicans who really want this, and they can't get something through the legislature, they can go and start an initiative petition to put it in the Constitution.
You're saying the Firearms Coalition, Missouri Right to Life,
sure,
use the process, right?
Absolutely.
Let me break this down, though. Clean Missouri was sometime around 18 back and forth. Clean Missouri was a gerrymandering scheme, good or bad, good politics.
It was a scheme, but it was...
Okay, but a gerrymander, they want to change the way. I mean, currently they gerrymander. It's just how they do it.
Yeah.
They want to change the way they draw districts. And they lump some other distractions in. And every Democrat said, that's fine. Every Republican said, oh, you're mixing things. Now it's funny how the chairs on this, it's like the musical chairs. Now Democrats saying this is ballot candy, and Republicans saying, no, this is all the way it should be done. There has been a wild hypocritical shift here.
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, if you pull back and look at it, this would have raised the threshold just about the time that they would put into the Constitution reproductive rights for women. So if you really pull back, quite honestly, we could have been in the business of deceiving voters to raise the threshold, after reproductive rights were put in the Constitution.
Probably how that would have happened.
It's guaranteed how it would have happened. There's not a lawyer worth their salt.
End of the day, when we talked about Clean Missouri, I've always found you to be probably the most pragmatic politician I know.
Sure.
There was an element of shadiness to Clean Missouri to add things around the way to gerrymander, whatever you want to say, draw districts. It was a concept the Supreme Court said is good. The Republicans just took your same rules and played by them. They were a little hypocritical then and now. You're a little hypocritical both when you're saying, well, no, the ballot candy shouldn't be on there. A lot of ballot candy in Clean Missouri.
The Clean Missouri ballot candy brought lobbyist gifts down to $5. Then 2 years later, they repealed it by saying we're going to ban lobbyist gifts by taking them from $5 to $0. So we had unlimited.
But ballot candy, to me, taking lobbyist gifts and something about drawing legislative districts, those are different topics. The court says no, but I guess my white trash intuition says yes.
Sure, I would argue that this legislature is dysfunctional because districts have been gerrymandered by the Republican Party for the last 20 years. And the fact of the matter is, if you wanted a better legislature and you wanted people that were actually going to work with each other, you have to have more competitive districts.
I understand that. It is odd when Claire McCaskill gets 48% of the vote, but the legislature's,
Sure.
1/3 Democrat. However, I do think if you're drawing those maps, it's a little hard. Democrats live predominantly in very compact areas right on the state line. It's the only place really is Columbia and a little bit of Springfield. You can draw those kind of districts where you wedge out and make them competitive. The Democrats can win. I think geography hurts a little, right?
Yeah, look, that's a fight that would have to have within our own party. You'd have to have some people on our side that have those really nice, cozy 80% Democratic districts, maybe go down to 65 or 70 in order to shore up some of the other districts that could be more competitive to really more closely represent what those communities are.
But it's hard to draw those districts because when you're right on those state lines, it makes it more, I think it's more of a challenge. Look, if St. Louis was in Rolla you could definitely draw more competitive districts much easier than if it's right on the Mississippi River.
Yeah, but I would also argue that the places that are grossly affected by it are the suburbs. I don't think the suburbs are accurately represented by the districts that are drawn today, because we are all packed into urban areas, and the fights are in the suburbs that, in my opinion, have been gerrymandered by the Republican Party for a long time. And if we could just have an honest district drawn in certain places outside of the urban areas, which would require some of the urban areas to give up some of those Democratic points, right? Then I think you would see different outcomes.
Are we seeing, right? You've been in this for a long time.
Yeah, maybe too long.
Did you serve in the worst part for the Democrats? There's a cycle to the Republicans where they were at their lowest point, and now they're at their highest. Do you think this is the lowest point? Is abortion really the touch? I kept waiting. Look, I think there's a secret. I think let's say the Republicans would do better public policy with fewer Republicans here.
Sure.
But is this the point? I've heard for a long time, Trump's on the ballot. Suburban women will vote for him. This. And it really hasn't turned back in a broad way. Is the abortion issue being on the ballot the thing that right to work wasn't? Is it the thing that makes people vote Democrat for the state legislature?
Yeah, I think it is. I think people are starting to understand that this new Republican Party, and we've seen it all week this week, we've seen it during the FRA debate, it's about consolidating power. They don't care about women. They don't care about women's rights over their bodies. The pro-life issue is nothing more than, to them at this point, I do believe there are people that they're very pro-life, right, that do believe in that. I think that there are certain members of the Republican Party that are using it as a tool now, and their beliefs aren't there. It's something that they can pander to people with.
I do think the problem with the supermajority is I've not heard anybody in the party come up with an innovative way to persuade Missourians that the current abortion law is good. Yeah. I think they've stopped persuading, and they just scream to each other. I really think that's a problem on the Republican side. There's nobody sitting and thinking, how do we persuade people that our side on abortion is right?
Yeah.
I think they just kind of scream at each other and plot different ways to kind of work the system. And I mean, the system's made to be worked by going and persuading people.
Yeah, look, I think you're in a situation where they are products of their own success, right? Why do they feel like they need to persuade people? When have they lost? When have they gone to,
The Democrats own some of the blame for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Democratic Party has got to do a better job at communicating with people, not just in urban areas, but around the suburbs, Independence, Missouri, and Lee Summit, and Blue Springs, and Chesterfield, and St. Charles. And, I think some of the representation you've seen from even the St. Charles area. I've been to St. Charles. I have good friends over there. I don't think they may be Republican. I don't think they are MAGA Republican. I think you have a big union membership over there. And that's a situation of being primary only races.
When it comes out, though, right to work was an issue that Missourians overwhelmingly reject.
Absolutely.
It didn't result in electing Democrats. If abortion's on the August ballot, I assume it's going to pass. It has in other places.
Yeah.
Will they remember that in November?
I think by and large, this has been such a national conversation. I think right to work was something in the state level that was something you had to communicate to voters.
People don't even know what that is.
I know, exactly. Well,
abortion, I think most people have a concept of what abortion is.
Yeah, you definitely had to have a conversation with the state that you don't, but you turn on MSNBC to Fox News to OANN, this is a national conversation. And unfortunately, in today's world, it used to be all politics is local, and now it's all national. I will always be Nancy Pelosi, and Caleb Rowden will always be Donald Trump. And, when we knock on doors, they ask us about the national politics now, right? That used to be they'd ask us about a park or a playground or some local ordinance that was happening to help with it. Now it's whatever the talking head on TV, the channel that they watched, they want to know about that. Sometimes people look at me and they say, you give them hell in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So we've got to get back to politics being local and people having good relationships with their elected leaders and elected leaders being more honest about what they're doing and not just pandering to the loudest person in the room.
Bring it back to the Missouri Senate. This session, there was an education bill. Thought it was an interesting bill. For the first time, I think you really had to sit back and say, usually charter school jersey, public school jersey. The bill that you all crafted, it had something for everyone. And it truly did make a large investment in public education. I know at the end of the day, I think a lot of folks in the education world were against it, but there was a legitimate reason a public school could support that. It wasn't just window dressing.
Yeah, look, that was a priority of the pro tem in his last year, and I can tell you, hell or high water, he was going to get something done on it. And we did the best we could to try to craft something that we could absolutely live with. something that we felt was a generational investment in public education if we had to do that. We're not fans of the charter schools in Boone County. We never were. But the fact of the matter is...
Compromise.
Yeah. Well, look,
you didn't vote for it.
No. And by the way, if the pro tem is from Columbia, I mean, so it's hard to go up against somebody that has all the tools of the trade, and that's their number one priority in their last year of session, as you kind of saw this week, right? Yeah. And so we did the best we could. We were also trying to prepare ourselves for something that could last a decade, right? A generational investment into public education. Something that if, in fact, somebody that isn't going to invest into public education wins the governor's race in November, we have some accountability over the next decade to see and watch how they're investing, and they have the ability to invest a big time into public education.
Here's something you're proud of when you leave the...
Oh, unequivocally, all the work I've done with criminal justice reform, Lamar Johnson. I mean, there are people who aren't in prison today because people who are innocent that aren't in prison today because of legislation.
That's the thing to tell your kids about, right?
Hands down.
I mean, that is an amazing thing.
Hands down. To
a Republican supermajority, to get people to look past their biases, whatever those are,
yep,
and let innocent people out of prison.
Yep.
I mean, that is a hell of a testament on your career.
And really want to give credit to Senator Luke Meyer for working with me on that when we got that done. Senator Williams has done a great job in that area as well. And no, unequivocally, when you can go and have dinner with a guy who less than a year ago was in lockup, and I've been able to really get to know
an innocent
man that never should have been in the first place, an absolute travesty of the system, and know that what you did brought him to that place.
Shout out to your wife also.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, what I did was...
What painful work, but on the days you have success, almost like being a Democrat in the Senate.
Yeah. Painful
work, but when you have a good day, boy, it's a great day.
Yeah. You never know the sweet without the bitter.
So give me last question.
Sure.
You'll be leaving the state Senate. Probably the most accomplished career of any senator in the minority I could think of, especially since term limits. Give me some advice you'd give to somebody that's going to put their hand on that Bible in January.
People don't care about party anymore. People really, I mean, you should align yourself with what you closely believe in, but people really just want someone to tell them, shoot them straight. And they want you to stand up to your own party when you have to. They want somebody that is going to fight for them and not for some tweet or something they heard on Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. They legitimately just want someone to be level-headed with them. They want someone that's going to compromise more than they tell you. They really want someone that's going to find ways home on all sorts of legislation. And the DNR by your name is important because it's what brought you into politics, and you have like-minded individuals around you. But when the rubber meets the road, sometimes Dems make mistakes, and sometimes Republicans make mistakes. And you have to really find your place to traverse that gauntlet and think about what you're doing instead of thinking about how it's going to help you in your next campaign.
Senator John Rizzo, it has been an honor to cover you here.
Thank you very much.
This week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back with our Opinion Maker panel after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
When I take office, the first thing I'm going to do when my hand comes off the Bible is enact our Day One crime plan.
Kehoe's plan: support law enforcement, remove liberal prosecutors, crack down on illegal immigration and sanctuary cities, charge fentanyl dealers with murder.
Those things are what it takes to be tough on crime and make sure that we get our communities back.
Endorsed by law enforcement, Mike Kehoe for governor. Paid for by the American Dream PAC.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome to our end of session Opinion Maker panel. Garrett, Webb, welcome back to the show, sir.
Good to see you.
I'm not going to do it this time. Ashley Bland, Manlove, welcome back.
Pleasure, friend.
For the last time, makes my heart hurt.
Yeah.
And your brooch is good, but it's a step down from the last one, I think.
We'll talk about that offline.
Bill Hardwick, Pulaski County, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Ed, just an inch run for Congress, right?
Yep. Yes, I am. Thanks for having me on.
Congrats. What got you in the race?
It's a long thing coming. It's really we need to make sure we get common sense conservatives up there to actually start moving things forward, start putting the policies before the political games that are going on, especially in D.C. with what we're seeing. Our freedoms are at jeopardy right now. And
don't you have to be like 80 to get to Congress?
Well, and that's the thing about it is we keep electing the same type of politician to go up there, more, career, out-of-touch politicians. They're not in touch with the average day working American right now, and I think that's a big issue. We got to get fresh new faces up there, and that's why I'm in it.
Nice. Bill Hardwick, IP reform. I always like to qualify this show and say because of the time constraints for our different affiliates, we have to tape this before the last day of session happens. So let's assume, like most folks would here, as we tape this on Friday morning at 9, IP reform doesn't pass. It kind of come down to me, you could run IP reform to the ballot on straight up the question of should we reform the IP process.
Right.
But the Republicans didn't want to do that. They wanted to have some of these sweeteners to goose it. Why didn't you just take it to the ballot and make your case to the people of the state?
Yeah, I think a version of IP reform is just having the actual initiative that people are going to pass as that's what they read. And just trust the voters to read that and be smart enough to say, this is what we want.
Or make your case.
Make your case. And that's what's going to seem like we're going to end up doing. A lot of conservatives are disappointed about IP reform. They feel like that. I feel like it should be harder to amend the Constitution.
I do too.
Hard to pass a statute, hard to amend the Constitution. But where we're going to end up most likely is where we're always going to be, which is we're going to make our case directly to the voters on the issues that we care about. And that it's been a disappointing session for those reasons. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's a totally bad thing.
Okay, I mean, to me, hey, you say you want IP reform. That's our top priority. You get IP reform, but you kind of want to clean Missouri up and goose it. I think they could have made a case. I mean, I think it should be harder to amend the Constitution. I think they could have made a case to the people of this state that it shouldn't be impossible, but it should be harder to amend without all the BS.
Look, I think I'm the only person at this table and one of the few people in the state that's both run statewide initiative petition campaigns, but also been in the Secretary of State's office processing them when they're turned in. It is not an easy process, and it's only half of the process to get there, right? You've got to get the signatures, or if it's, a lot of support, or if it's just a small petition, it's still hundreds of thousands of signatures you have to collect, and then you still have to run a campaign and get it to November.
I think that they had what they want. IP reform goes to the ballot. You go to the folks at this stage, you make your case, which we may disagree. I think it's a fair case. I think it should be harder to amend this Constitution. Not impossible, but right now it seems too easy. But then they almost wanted to game the rules.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest one of the biggest qualms that I have about it is like you're not making the playing field even. You want to make it harder for me to change the Constitution, but then you're not making it harder for you to change the Constitution, right? So like in the legislature, basically, is what we're talking about. You don't have to. You just have to have the simple majority most of the time, and sometimes you have to have that 2/3, which then could be, translated to it should be a little harder for the to change the actual Constitution. But as I said on the last time on the show, our Constitution is jacked from the jump. So. Yeah. I think we probably need to look at that.
So, Vix, it feels like you had what you wanted, what you were screaming for, this IP reform. Why not just take it and go? Why is there some thought, well, you just can't make this case to the voters without all this other distractions?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the voters, and we should just make the case to the voters by itself. I think with some of the language that we've had in there recently with the IP reform.
It's just games to try to distract people to pass it.
It is.
They didn't feel confident in their argument. Mm-hmm. And I think you have a good argument.
It is a good argument. It's a solid argument. Our U.S. Constitution is very hard to amend, and our Missouri Constitution should be the exact same. When you look at government and the way it's structured, that is the backbone document, and your backbone document should not change that often unless major things are going on. Everything else should come through statutes and come through your actual elected officials. And that's the case that needs to be made to the vote. That's the case that the voters should be getting, and the message the voters should be getting is that.
Garrett, do they come back next year with, now we need IP reform, no Martians can vote or whatever? I mean, it'll just be more, I just think the band picks back up again. And I think some folks are going to look around and say, well, last year you had it. What the hell's wrong with you?
I agree to a certain point, but I think we've seen in the legislature that Republicans have a very short attention span for these types of issues, and they'll move on. I don't think the average Republican voter or the average Missourian, for that matter, even knows what initiative petition form is. And so I think next year, with all due respect to you guys, I think it'll be a whole different ballgame. It's not going to be something that we're going to see take up the same amount of time that it did this year.
But will it be different? I mean, I think it's at this point safe to assume the abortion question will be on the ballot. I think if you look at states even more Republican than Missouri, it's passed. If abortion's in the Constitution, all of a sudden, well, we need to change that, then we'll change the IP reform.
I think a lot of our motivation was the issue of abortion. And conservatives like myself felt like it should not be in the Constitution, that we want to protect life, we want to be part of life. So that gave us a lot of energy around IP reform. That's true. What happens with that will kind of affect what we do with IP doing in the future. But I think in the long run, the issue of our Constitution, how to amend it, is still going to be an issue in the legislature. It's been for 30 years, actually.
Give me something good you took from this session. I mean, while the IP reform thing has got a lot of the attention, there were several good things that moved. The big pieces of public policy, whether you liked them or not, were big changes to Missouri.
Yeah, there's some things I'm really happy about. We got a good veterans bill passed. I had some language from the Missouri National Guard that helps people get their education benefits, stuff that makes it attractive for veterans to live and work in the state of Missouri. I was excited about that. I'm excited we got the FRA passed. There are a lot of folks in my district who...
It's like it didn't have to be that hard.
No, it seems like it didn't have to be that hard. And I know it may be surprising to hear me say that, because a lot of folks like myself, we want people not to be dependent, get to a situation where they're not dependent on Medicaid. But there are people who need that program. I want them to have access to health care. It seems like a good fiscal policy for our state, and the state we're thinking about our long-term fiscal policy. I'm glad we got that done too.
What happened this year? Give me some good and bad, wherever you want.
This year, especially, with it being my last session, really, it repeated itself a couple of times. Whether it's always some major, either public safety bill or an abortion bill or an elections bill or an education bill.
You need an abortion bill, but yes.
There's always something, that sends everybody into a tussle. I am happy that we passed the FRA. I've never understood, the pushback on that, since it's not like a tax on citizens, really. It's the hospitals taxing themselves, which I think is very fiscally responsible, and then we use that to match federal funds.
4-1.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that pays for our Medicaid program. And I am still flabbergasted about the amount of Republicans who don't understand that it's their population on Medicaid, especially here in Missouri.
No doubt. Give me something good that happened.
I mean, I think passing the budget, first of all, we kind of...
Standards are lower in
The
here.
standards are pretty low, but, you look at this, we all have been through this process before. The chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee and the chairman of the House Budget Committee always decided what was going to be in the budget, right?
Sure.
This just was this process that, of course, it was a condensed timeline, all of that. At least it was out front and center that this is what's going to happen. You've got to make your case, whether you're a legislator or a lobbyist that wants something in the budget. You've got to make your case to both of them and get it in the budget and get it done. And that's what happened. And I totally give props to Chairman Smith and, of course, Chairman Huff for being able to do that.
Give me something good that happened.
Yeah, we had a good education package that passed through. I think it had a lot of good things for raising teachers' pay, dealing with the transportation, also getting some more school choice items out there to give parents more options when it comes to education for their kids here in Missouri. So that was a big package that we passed here in the legislature. And then also a recent bill. I worked on this bill. It was Representative Phil Amato's bill regarding personal property rights for squatters and everything, for being able to remove squatters from personal property.
That come to downtown Jeff City, because we could use a little bit of that.
Yeah, so he passed that bill, and I think that's good. It's good to make sure that we are taking an invested interest in protecting personal property rights here in the state of Missouri. So
let's talk a little elections. Give me the reason when folks go in the polls they should vote for you for Congress.
Yeah, but people should vote for me because I'm a fresh new face in the conservative movement by itself. I actually have accomplishments as well. Been able to ensure that we passed legislation last year, obviously dealing with reducing, getting rid of Social Security tax for senior citizens. I dealt with items that regard protecting people's private information when you're dealing in court information and stuff. And
from all the way from your hometown to Wards, you're going to see this summer, right?
Yeah.
Give me a race that you're looking at. Give me a good prediction this summer.
I mean, I'm 100% watching the governor's race, of course. I think Mike Kehoe is going to take this away. I think he's going to be the governor that Missouri deserves. And he's the one that I think is not only, everybody says Ashcroft has the name ID and everything, that other state senator from St. Charles County, but Mike Kehoe's the one that's not only working it the hardest, but the one that will be the best governor for this.
There's a little Mike Minton going on. The crowds he's drawing make no sense. I mean, there is something stirring. It's anecdotal, but I do think where he's been up on television, like in the Springfield market, the race is tightened. Give me a prediction this summer about a race.
Oh, about a race?
Yeah.
I think Andrew Bailey squeaks it out. I think Andrew Bailey, at the end of the day, he's a guy.
A tidal wave of East Coast money coming in.
Yeah, against it. Yeah, and I think Will Sharp's a pretty intelligent guy. He's a good guy. But I think Andrew Bailey, at the end of the day, I mean, he's going to come through being just somebody who relates to Missourians, in my opinion. Just guess.
Legitimate Missouri war hero.
Yeah, and I guess I got to say, I got a soft spot for people who served our country and who sacrificed in that way. So.
Give me something that I know from afar. Give me a race you're watching this summer, something that you're keeping an eye on. Won that Senate race in Kansas City for Greg Razor's seat.
Oh, Pat Contreras versus Patty Lewis.
Yeah.
It should be Patty. Patty Lewis would be versus Patty. That's kind of
a little moment of being a woman on the ballot at this time with the abortion issue. Right.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why I'm watching the governor's race as well. I mean, nobody thinks that a Democrat can run statewide, but if you have the minimum, depending, and of course, we don't know which ballots they're going to be on, but minimum wage on the ballot, abortion rights on the ballot, and a female governor, like just trends from the nation say she wins.
And the left to win the week.
I think Patty Pruitt, who's been wrongly incarcerated for more than 30 years, graduated yesterday from WashU as part of a dozen women in prison graduating. I really think not only does she need to be out of prison, but she won the week.
Won the week.
Myself, this is the last time I got to listen to that chamber.
So what O'Brien sides on, did you? Won the week.
I do have a lot of respect for Mike Moon with his single subject stance. That's not popular, but stand up for the Missouri Constitution. So I got to give him credit for that.
Won the week.
I was actually going to say Mike Moon as well. I think he, stand up for the Missouri Constitution is a big thing, even though some of his methods might be a little bit unconventional.
I'm going to say Caleb Broadman. The man served this state now for 14 years. Some of the hardest times ever to be in Senate leadership. He was there, led the state well, landed the chamber with never voting for a PQ, a real senator and a real statesman. Caleb Brown won the week. I hope you'll win the week next week by coming back here and joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.